tenant, of Ellie's tenant, Miss Luchalis. Why do you do this to me? Why these names? who was asleep. Cheboiter and Chebois. What is the difference, please? Same thing? Ricky scoffed before Tara could answer. No, it is not. Victoria corrected. The Cheboiter is the person, and the Chemba is what they do. And when you don't know, don't pretend, Victor admonished the young man. For example, Nom Salah ka fe Chemboa. That man practices obia. Nom Salah sa Nom Salah se yon Chemboite. The man is an obia man. Kim illustrated the difference. Tara raised her eyebrows at Ricky, who had nothing to say. So, to continue, Miss Charis awoke from the sleep to find a man in the room. She defended herself, but the attack and the fight were so violent that Matteli killed her. Oh Lord, Catherine said softly. Everybody was wrapped up in the story. The story continued. Now everyone knew what had happened. It was a small community then, and is a small community now. But in the end, all three men were arrested. However, the fear of the Obia man was so strong that no one would testify. But the Attorney General went ahead with the court case with the little bit of evidence he has. The killer, Aurélien Matteli, and the Cheboiter, Alphonse Guise, were found not guilty of murder, but the landlord, Louis Elie, was found guilty. But him registered, everyone surprised. When Elie realized what had happened, he decided to tell the full story. But Matteli assured him that the protection of the Cheboiter was in place and all would be all right. So when he got the death sentence, he was not worried. After all, he was protected. So what happened? Peanuts demanded. They hanged him right there. Tara said flatly, and others just walked away. Sad luck. English relished in the phrase. Peanut grinned at the expletive. Alexander, mind your language, his mother warned. Officer Placide led them into the courtyard. And here we stand on the spot that marks the end of one of St. Lucia's most heinous crimes. The crime was awful, and the justice swift. Okay? And anybody knows what that crime was? It's no longer the most hideous. It's no longer the most hideous crime.
Does anybody know where the old jail is?
Well, I think they know where the old jail is.
Somebody said no.
You don't know where the old jail is? You know where police headquarters is? That's where the old jail is. The old wall building that is concrete all over, even the roof. That's the jail. That's the old jail. Okay? And they built a new prison behind it, which is old too. Right? So really, this scene in 1904 would only have been the wooden, the wall structure that you see to the front, which where they painted it in the psychedelic color, going all the way up to the bottom of the hill. That was the old jail. There have been other buildings added to it over time, you know, but that was the old jail. And there's a cemetery in the yard for hangmen. When they hanged you, they did not put your body on consecrated ground. Every grave in St. Lucia is owned by a church. Whether you're Christian or Muslim, the grounds are consecrated. Now we have Muslim portions in our cemetery because most of the cemeteries are either Anglican or Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
So they were basically Christian cemeteries. Since the advent of the Muslims, there has been a space I know of for a fact in Vieux-Fort. I would imagine that there's one over there too for Muslims. They come in and they do their own consecration and they consecrate the ground. So that if you die if you're condemned and you're hung under the principles of the church of the day, you could not be buried in consecrated ground. The same thing went if you committed suicide. They have changed that now with what is called Vatican II. Any one of you here are Roman Catholics? Are you all familiar with Vatican II? Vatican II was a major change in the liturgy of the Roman Catholic Church. Before Vatican II, the Mass was said in Latin. Okay? The priest turned his back to the congregation and said an entire Mass on the high altar with his back to you, except on occasions when he had to raise the host, or come forward to commune you, or to go up into a pulpit, which is like a scaffold going in the air, to tell you that you, your parents, and your grandparents are a bunch of sinners and you'll never see the face of God. This formed the basis of every sermon that I can remember. Okay? So, this made me hate church. And I'm telling you, with Vatican II now, one of the first things of Vatican II was they had to get a table for the altar, and the priest had to face the congregation. So the celebration of the Mass was seen by the congregation. The priest came forward to the congregation to preach, and finally the priest had to preach about what the lessons were and what the gospel of the day was. Okay? He could no longer cuss people. And,
Cette parole j'étais.
It was not a pleasant exercise as a child going to church. Okay? So I thought it wise to let you all know this before I read this story to you all. In fact, what I want to tell you, for me, the worst crime that has been committed in modern day remains for me the murder of a child in 2003, for which her stepfather is still to be tried, and that it is the murder of Valinda Joseph. I read the whole case file. In fact, I've written a whole novel based on the case, but I had to do it as fiction. I wanted to write a documentary on the case. But I had to do it as fiction because the man has not been tried up to this day. He spent 11 years on remand and was released. But it is a hideous case. Very, very sad. And what was sadder still, the child was only 13 years old. I have never, ever forgotten reading about it. Okay? Very, very bad. There was another bad one where the couple was burned to death, the Etherington murder. It happened in 1971 on the Moon. That is another bad case. They had to call in Scotland Yard to solve it. But of course, it was, with all the expense, it was solved by Detective Collins Barrett, who is a local detective. Okay? In 1904, there were no human rights lawyers. Not that I need them. The killers were caught, tried, and hung. I speak of the Moshi murder. Any one of you ever heard of the Moshi murder? Okay, I'll tell you about it. Fulton, Victor, and Victoria knew the story. The others had heard of it, but not the details. Peanut knew the story too, but English had no idea what Tara was talking about. Well, let me tell you the story of these three men and their dealings with the world of Obia. Tara stepped forward. As the story unfolded, English's horror increased. In September 1903, three men from Moshi area of St. Lucia got together to acquire a young boy for the purposes of Obia. The child that they would sacrifice to the devil in order to obtain financial wealth. The three men were Montut Edmond, St. Louis Leon, and Edgar St. Hill. They put their money together, and Edmond Montut went to Barbados in search of a child that they could sacrifice. The men figured it was necessary to get the child from another island, because if they stole one in St. Lucia, that child would be missed and people would go looking for the lost one. They would never stop looking. They found Rupert Mack, a 13-year-old Barbadian, and promised him employment in St. Lucia as an errand boy. On the night of the 29th of September 1903, the three men murdered the 13-year-old by strangling him. Montauk Edmond was a licensed butcher, and he proceeded to cut out the heart and cut off the hands at the wrists. Meanwhile, the family in Barbados had reported the disappearance of young Mack. In no time, the men were arrested. In the short period of time that the boy had been in the community, he had made an impression. You see, he was an English speaker in a Creole-speaking community, but also he had that heavy Barbadian accent. The police searched Montauk's house, where they found the body parts and a skillet, as well as a bloody rag, 2 serpent skins, 5 pieces of bone, a portion of sulfur in rock and powder form, and a vial containing a dark liquid, and in his vial, a manuscript in French. They were seeking to create la main de la gloire, the hands of glory, an obeah ritual which is supposed to make a person invisible. They were arrested, tried for the murder, found guilty, and before Christmas 1904, they were all hanged. Now, I've been talking all the time. Any one of you got a story to tell me? Please?
That's a true story, yeah?
Huh?
I'm just saying that's a true story.
Yeah, that was true.
They hanged them and they buried them in one hole.
That one, I don't know too much about.
Yes.
I wouldn't doubt that. In those days, there was
didn't bother with 3
there was a
holes.
shortage of space.
One hole, they put all 3 in there.
Yeah, but it's fair than that book.
Okay, I will read the Pink Plantation House. Any one of you know where the Pink Plantation House is? Where is it?
Pink Plantation House.
Pink Plantation. You know where the Pink Plantation House is? You know, that's really not on the moon. It's called. I know that there is a tendency to generalize place names. I'll tell you something. The worst thing to do is to ask somebody around Castries for directions. Most of the time, they're not from Castries. They're living in Castries. They're working in Castries. But they will, for instance, you will tell somebody that I want to go to Monkey Hill. And they will direct you to Marsham. But actually, Monkey Hill is a part of Marsham. And it's the only hill in Marsham. It's the hill opposite Victoria Park. That is the hill that you start to climb before you reach Mindrew Phillip Park. Now you see, I'm showing my age. The name of the park before. The name of the park before was the Victoria Park, and before that it was the Castries Cemetery. It was actually a cemetery. It stopped being a cemetery in 1904. So it was a Castries Cemetery.
It smelled so much when it used to rain.
Not only that,
When
we used to get coffin nails all over the place, and dead people bones.
Yeah.
I think I'm so moody. I have actually taken dead people bones to throw behind handles. piece of a neck bone, a clavicle, a thigh bone. Well, a femur is good. A femur is a good throw. But this is putting jokes aside. We actually, when I was growing up, would find bones where we knew what they were. So there was always a cut or something. We used to rebury them. We actually used to find bones.
That's in the Phillip Park.
Yeah, we used to rebury. We were told to rebury them. You know? But in those days, when they said they clean, it was not like now when they use a backhoe to dig up a cemetery. Even the Anglican cemetery, when they dug it up to put Baptist Bank, it smelled for weeks because they dug up, the decomposing, and the undead. I still remember one of my vivid memories of the cemetery. I was big enough, I was working early, of the cemetery after the exhumed, so-called exhumed. What they did, they exhumed the current tomb. They did not exhume those that were buried before. But they also had forgotten some paupers' tombs. And there were some paupers that were recently buried. So you can imagine what we call Bigfoot.
You know what a pauper is, right?
And
A pauper.
a poor person. But there was even worse. Some of the shrouds, nylon had come in style. And nylon does not rot like that. It's almost like plastic. So there were some shrouds intact or torn all about the place. And people just used to hang them like flags on the cemetery wall. So that remained in my mind, an impression in my mind, years after the bank was built.
Making bread on the dead.
Yeah, they can so make
Yes,
bread
you
and
can
bread
bread
on
on
the
the
dead.
I'm taking you to the cemetery to see it tonight.
Part of the cooking.
No, I'm looking for a story to read. Hello, she greeted them. This is the Mon Military Cemetery, resting place of 5 governors. And you know, all those 5 governors died within the space of 3 years. You know. Check the dates. Including one, Governor Farquharson, which I wrote extensively about in my novel, Misty Garden. He seemed to have been quite a character. He didn't want to sign the act for the liberation of the slaves. Had to be done by a fellow called W. Torrance, who was his assistant. Established by the French. There are 2 of them, you know, which one you don't know? There's one established by the French and there's a British one.
British.
Yeah, the 2 of them. Okay, established by, I see you have established by the French around 1782. The English also use this place, it's not the same place though. Like, one of these days, you're near the Mon, I'll show you the French cemetery. There's not much left of it. The French cemetery is, you see where they buried Derek Walcott?
Yeah.
It's towards the back of the hill. But you have to really dig
The inspiration.
the time. It's there. And I believe a lot of brigands are buried there because I can't find brigands' graves. I've looked all over for brigands' graves, I can't find it. The brigands were, I'll tell you, before I read that story to you all, I better give you all a little history lesson. The French Revolution took place in France about 1780. With that revolution came
14th of July, 1795.
1795? No.
No, 1789.
No.
Yes, 14th
It
July.
actually started.
When they stormed the
You're talking,
Bastille.
no, the storming of the Bastille was not the start of the revolution. That's
Okay,
why you
going
have
further back.
Yeah.
Okay.
The revolution actually started in 1780. It started in the house and it went out on the streets.
Yeah.
But what you're describing there is the second revolution, which when they stormed the Bastille and they went for the king.
Yeah.
That is the beginning of the reign of terror.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But really, it started around 1780. They overthrew the monarchy and they put the king in jail. And they changed the order of things in France. There was a 10-day week called the Décade. They had 10 months in the year, and the months went around with the seasons, spring, summer, and autumn and winter. In fact, the first 3 months of the year was called the Floreal, which was spring. And there were others. So they changed around everything. They changed the method of weighing to what is called avoir du poids, which was the pounds, ounces, and so on. It is a total change in civilization. Okay? The slaves now, having heard about the revolution, revolted in Saint-Domingue, which is today Haiti, and began the Haitian Revolution. Okay? So the Haitian Revolution was as a result of the French Revolution in France, because Haiti was France. Also at the time, the revolution was changing hands. They were sometimes French, sometimes British. But a curious thing happened. Napoleon came to power about 1792. And Napoleon was made Consul of France. And one of the things he did was to abolish slavery. Believe it or not, slavery was abolished. So when the slaves in St. Lucia realized that slavery was abolished, but they were still slaves, they decided that if they did not get their freedom, they would revolt. So in 1795, the slaves gradually moved out from households, moved off their estates, not all, but sufficient of them, over 15,000 of them, moved into the interior of the island and declared themselves the French army in the woods. Right? And believe it or not, they declared war on royalist France, fighting under the red, white, and blue, which is the tricolor, the flag of France, which is the flag up to today. So they formed themselves into a revolutionary army. They got arms from Guadeloupe, and they actually conquered the French, repelled the British, and took over the island. So for 1 year, 1796, the whole of St. Lucia was controlled by the ex-slaves. And that was the climax of the Brigands' War. By 1797, a British general called Ralph Abercrombie came to the island with 36,000 men, and he brought in black rangers, over 10 to 15,000 of them out of Dominica, placed them under the control of a general, he was not a general then, but he became a general later, Sir John Moore, who went into the interior and took the battle to those brigands. And they won, but not before the brigands established conditions that they would not go back into slavery. So they were allowed to retire with their weapons, providing they would not fight against the British. They were not taken back into slavery, but some were absorbed into the British Army and were sent to fight their black brothers in Africa. That was the end of the Brigands' War. So you see, we are from a very important tribe of people. St. Lucians are descended from some very noble-minded people. Their descendants actually took over an island, and rather than rule it, handed it back to the British. This is not the case in Haiti. Perhaps we were too smart, because when Haiti continued, Haiti was blocked at every point until it is a poor country. It has never been given a chance because it made the mistake of defeating white armies. We did the same thing, but we gave them back land. Only on one condition, that we would not be slaves. Okay?
Okay, so at this point, everybody needs to get up and stretch now, please.
Yeah, intermission.
Up and stretch.
I
And
need to-
brief intermission.